Have you ever stopped, looked at your phone screen and wondered, how is the person who turned my life into ashes now living like they just stepped out of a perfect dream? The photos they post on social media, the beaming smiles by the ocean, the sparkling eyes next to their new love, the captions overflowing with joy, feel like a dagger straight to your heart. Meanwhile, you're still quietly tending to the invisible wounds they left behind: an empty bank account, shattered trust, dreams that once burned brightly now reduced to a pile of ash. Where's the justice? How can the one who trampled you walk freely into the sunset while you're struggling just to stand back up in the dark? Today, I'm not here to offer cheap comfort or a quick fix. We're about to go on a journey together, a deep dive into the truth, peeling back the mask the narcissist so carefully placed in front of your eyes. This isn't a story of bitterness or empty curses. This is a story of truth, raw, undeniable truth that will ultimately free you from the chains they once bound you with. I'm going to take you through 11 doors, 11 secrets leading to their downfall, secrets they never wanted you to uncover. Each door is a piece of a puzzle, and as we put them together, you'll begin to see a very different picture. The narcissist isn't the triumphant winner they pretend to be. They are prisoners of a cage they built themselves. And you are the one who broke free and stepped into the light. Get ready, because this journey won't just open your eyes. It will transform the way you see yourself, your life, and the scars they left behind. Imagine you're standing in front of a movie theater. On the big screen plays The Life of the Narcissist, a glamorous film filled with spotlight moments, extravagant scenes, and a carefully edited happy ending. You watch it, and a part of you wonders, why am I the one left behind while they get to bask in the limelight? But then you step out of the theater, take a look behind the scenes, and realize it's all just a cheap performance. The props are fake, the script is hollow, and the lead actor, the narcissist, is simply trying to hide the truth. They're not truly living, they're just acting. We grow up believing that bad people will eventually face consequences, that cruelty comes with an inevitable cost. That's the fairy tale we were told as children. The villain falls and the hero rises from the ashes. But when it comes to a narcissist, everything seems upside down. Not only do they appear to escape justice, they seem to thrive, as if they've figured out how to cheat the system of life. You've felt that, haven't you? That helpless feeling as you watch them walk away, leaving you in ruins, while they wear the cloak of success. But here's what I need you to hear loud and clear. That's not the truth. It's an illusion, a distorted mirror they built to deceive you, and more importantly, to deceive themselves. Today, I'm here to shatter that mirror. I'm going to show you 11 ways their life is quietly crumbling. 11 cracks in the perfect wall they've constructed. This isn't about bitterness or hoping for their downfall. This is about reclaiming the power they once stole from you. The power to see through them, to rise, and to realize that walking away was the wisest choice you ever made. So, let's step through the first door together. We're not just going to skim the surface. We're diving into the shadows they've tried so hard to hide, and I promise you, the light at the end of this tunnel, it's meant for you, not for them. 1. Believing in illusions leads to their downfall. A narcissist doesn't live in reality. They live inside a bubble of illusion, where they crown themselves as infallible geniuses. They truly believe every foolish idea they have is the key to unlocking some grand treasure, starting a business without a plan, blindly investing in things they don't understand, or spending money like a billionaire even though their bank account is hanging by a thread. In their mind, failure doesn't exist. There are only others too short-sighted to recognize their greatness. But reality doesn't play along with illusions. It pops that bubble with brutal, unforgiving force. Picture someone borrowing piles of money from friends, family, even banks, to dive headfirst into some crypto craze they overheard online. They shout to the world that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, that they're about to out-earn the richest people on the planet. They boast about the luxury cars they'll buy, the extravagant trips they'll take. But then, the market crashes. They lose everything, money turns to dust, friends turn away after broken promises, and their family stops believing in them. Now they sit alone in a run-down apartment with no power, no water, yet they still tell themselves it's just temporary. After all, how could a genius like them fail forever? But that's never the last time. They leap from one illusion to the next, opening a coffee shop without knowing how to brew coffee, investing in a film project no one watches, or buying an overpriced home just to show off, only to sell it at a loss when the debts pile up. They ignore advice, disregard data, and brush off warnings from others because to them, other people are just mediocre minds unworthy of teaching them anything. They believe they can bend reality to their will, that the world will one day bow before their brilliance. But reality doesn't bow. Reality punches them square in the face again and again. And when it all falls apart, they learn nothing. They stand in the rubble, unpayable debts, broken relationships, shattered dreams, and instead of looking inward, they point fingers outward. The bank was too harsh, the market was unfair, their friends weren't loyal enough, it's always someone else's fault, never theirs. But the truth is, they pushed themselves off the cliff, one step at a time, led by their blind faith in their own illusions. No one had to push them. They fell all on their own. And that hole they dug, it only gets deeper and darker until there's no way out. Why should you be grateful you walked away? Because you're no longer caught in their delusional dreams. You no longer have to watch them crash into walls or pay the price for their reckless plans. Plans you once tried to warn them about, only to be mocked in return. They're falling because of their illusions. But you're standing firmly on solid ground, rebuilding your life one brick at a time. You're no longer part of their failure story. You're the author of your own victory. 2. Blaming forever, never learning. A narcissist doesn't understand the words, "I was wrong." It's a foreign concept, completely erased from their personal dictionary. They are masters of blame, turning every failure into someone else's fault. A failed job? It's because co-workers were incompetent or the boss was jealous. A broken relationship? It's because you weren't good enough, not obedient enough to deserve their perfection. They throw blame around like trash, quickly, carelessly, and never once looking back to pick it up. Think about someone who scams their friends for money, maybe borrowing a large amount with the promise of doubling it through some investment. But instead they blow it all on designer clothes, lavish parties, and meaningless indulgences. When their friends ask for their money back, they lash out, claiming that investments take time, that you just don't understand the process. And when the truth comes out, they get sued, relationships fall apart, but they don't stop. They just find a new victim, a new friend, a new lover, and repeat the cycle: deceit, failure, blame. They never pause to ask, was this my fault? Because in their world, mistakes are for other people. I once knew someone like this at work. They botched a major project, sent the wrong data, missed deadlines, caused the whole team to lose a contract, and when confronted, they didn't apologize. They pointed fingers at their teammates, saying they didn't provide enough support, that the manager didn't give clear instructions. The result? They got fired. But in their mind, it wasn't their fault. It was the system that was unfair. Then they moved on to another company, made the same mistakes, and got fired again. That cycle never stopped because they never learned. The scariest part? Blame isn't just something they do, it's a way of life. Every failure is an opportunity for them to criticize, to play the victim, to dodge the painful truth that they are the root of their own problem. They don't sit down to reflect, they don't try to grow, because how could someone perfect possibly need to change? But reality doesn't care about their ego. Every time they shift blame, they dig their failure pit a little deeper, losing jobs, loved ones, respect, until no one wants to stand by them. No one wants to hear their excuses anymore. Why should you be glad you walked away? Because you're no longer their scapegoat. You're no longer the one taking the fall for their lies, carrying the burden of their irresponsibility, the debts they racked up, the promises they broke, the messes they made that you once tried so hard to fix. They're destroying themselves by refusing to learn. But you You're moving forward with every lesson you gained from the wreckage they left behind. You're no longer trapped in their cycle of failure. You're the one who stepped out. Stronger, wiser, and free. 3. Rejecting the good, choosing the bad. Narcissists have a peculiar talent. They turn away from the best things in life. You, a stable job, genuine friendships, just to chase after something they can control. They don't want real gold. They want garbage, so long as they get to be the king of that trash heap. They leave you because you wouldn't bow to them. They walk away from great jobs because no one praised them enough. They abandon family because no one lets them manipulate. They call it freedom, but in truth they're just throwing away the very opportunities others could only dream of. Imagine someone in a beautiful relationship, with a patient, loving partner who stood by them through thick and thin. That was you. You were the one reaching out when they fell, listening when they needed comfort, sacrificing your needs so they could feel secure. But because you wouldn't let them control every step you took, because you wouldn't become their puppet, they turned away. They ran towards someone new, someone easier to manipulate, someone who would submit, and they thought that was a victory. But what happened next? That new person turned out to be toxic, jealous, and dragged them into an endless spiral of drama. They lost you, someone truly good, for a chaotic mess they can't escape. I once saw someone quit their dream job, high salary, amazing co-workers, a bright future, just because their boss didn't compliment them every day. They jumped to another company, thinking they'd be worshipped there, but a few months later they were fired for arrogance and irresponsibility. They didn't see it as a loss, they called it a new opportunity, but everyone knew they had traded a golden ticket for a roller coaster ride straight to the bottom. They never looked back. They never asked, "What did I just throw away?" Because for them, control mattered more than happiness. And this pattern repeats throughout their life. They leave warm homes for aimless adventures, trade sincere friendships for hollow flattery, sacrifice their health for fleeting pleasures. They think they're living authentically, but in truth, they're destroying the very foundation every human being needs for true happiness. They don't want what's good, they want power, and that power always leads them down darker, lonelier paths. Why should you be glad you walked away? Because they removed themselves from everything good that you represented, genuineness, stability, real love. You were gold in their hands, but they chose trash because they didn't know how to value you. Now you've kept your worth, rebuilding from what they discarded while they cling to the failures they chose. You no longer have to witness them throw away precious opportunities. You were the opportunity they lost, and that is your victory. 4. Faking happiness to hide failure. Narcissists are masters of illusion, flashing smiles in carefully curated photos, dreamy social media captions, and boastful stories about their perfect life. They post pictures by luxury pools holding expensive drinks, but hide the unpaid bills piling up behind the scenes. They show off a new partner as if they've found their soulmate, but conceal the screaming arguments and cruel insults that happen behind closed doors. Their happiness isn't real, it's a mask, a staged performance designed to make you hurt and to help them pretend they've moved on. Picture someone who just walked away from you, the person you once supported through everything. Now they're posting photos with someone new, writing sweet captions like, "Finally found true happiness." Your heart sinks and you wonder, did I lose? But if you look closer, you'll see the truth. That new partner isn't happiness. They're a prop, an audience for the narcissist's show. Behind that glamorous photo is a mountain of debt, borrowed money spent to maintain the illusion. There are nights filled with arguments because the new partner is starting to see the manipulation. There's emptiness because the narcissist doesn't know how to love. They only know how to perform. I once knew someone like that. After a divorce, they rushed to broadcast their new life all over social media, photos from luxury vacations, check-ins at high-end restaurants, smiling like they'd won the lottery. But the truth came out. They were living on borrowed money, had no stable job, and their new relationship crumbled within months because their need to control never changed. Those pictures weren't happiness. They were a smokescreen, a desperate escape from failure, a way to convince the world and themselves that they weren't losing. But failure doesn't disappear just because you paint over it. It's still there, rusting underneath, waiting to crack through the surface. They need you to believe in that facade, because if you believe it, they can believe it too. They want you to look at those photos and feel small so they can feel important, but you don't have to fall for it anymore. You don't have to compare your real, imperfect, yet authentic life to their carefully staged fiction. The truth is, they're not living, they're just surviving, clinging to temporary lies to avoid facing the wreckage within. And when that mask finally rips, when there's no one left to fool, no audience left to impress, they'll be left with nothing but themselves, exposed and defeated. Why should you be glad you walked away? Because you're no longer trapped in their illusion. You no longer live in a world of fake smiles and hollow words. You live in truth, maybe messy, maybe hard, but it's yours. They pretend to survive. You choose to live, and your light will never be dimmed by the shadow of their deception. 5. Creating enemies everywhere and reaping the consequences. A narcissist doesn't just move through life, they trample over it. They treat people like garbage, deceive friends for money, manipulate family to gain control, stab co-workers in the back to climb higher. They believe no one will ever stand up to them, that people will forever tolerate their cruelty. But they're wrong. You can't plant seeds of resentment everywhere and expect those seeds not to grow into a storm that eventually wipes you out. Think about someone who once stole a friend's idea, maybe a joint project, but claimed all the credit for themselves. They rose to success on the back of that betrayal, mocking others for not being sharp enough. But those friends didn't forget. They waited, gathered evidence, and one day exposed the truth. The narcissist lost their job, lost their reputation, and now lives in constant fear of who might be the next person to speak out. That's not a rare story, it's just nature's law. You reap what you sow. I once heard a story about someone who manipulated their entire family to take over an inheritance. They pushed siblings out, lied their way into getting everything, and thought they had won. But one of the siblings they discarded chose not to stay silent. They hired a lawyer, reopened everything, and dragged the narcissist into court. The result? The narcissist lost it all: money, house, and even the respect of the people around them. They didn't see it as consequences. They called it betrayal. But everyone knew the truth. They dug their own grave with greed and cruelty. And their enemies aren't always adults. Sometimes it's the children they neglected, the ones they insulted, the relatives they disrespected, who rise up and demand justice. There was a narcissist who once abandoned their children for a lavish lifestyle, thinking money would someday buy forgiveness. But when age and weakness caught up with them, those children never came back. They spoke out instead, letting the narcissist face the loneliness they had earned. Karma doesn't need their permission, it only needs time, and time always favors the truth. Why should you be glad you walked away? Because you're no longer in their line of fire. You're no longer the victim of their lies, no longer the target of the cruelty they so freely unleash. They've built an army against themselves. People they hurt, people they dismissed, and one day that army will demand a price. You've left the battlefield, now it's them who must face the storm they created, a storm you no longer have to endure. 6. Losing money, losing looks, losing everything. Narcissists survive on two things: money and appearance. They use money to manipulate, lavish gifts, extravagant trips, expensive distractions. And they use their looks to lure people in. A dazzling smile, seductive eyes, charm that seems effortless. These are their tools, their weapons of control. their way of keeping others close. But what happens when the money runs out from foolish decisions? When age slowly takes away the beauty they once flaunted, they become an empty shell with nothing left to offer and no one left who wants to stay. Picture someone who once drove luxury cars, lived in a mansion and boasted about their wealth like royalty. They spent money like water on designer goods, over-the-top parties, all to maintain a perfect image. But then came bad investments, a business venture no one needed, a risky gamble gone wrong. It all crumbled. The house was repossessed, the car sold off, and now they ride the bus and live in a rundown apartment. There's no one left to impress. Money was their power, but without it they have nothing to hold anyone's attention. And what about their looks? They once turned heads wherever they went. Shiny hair, confident posture, a voice that drew people in. They bounced from one relationship to another, using their appearance like currency to buy admiration. But time spares no one. Hair thins, skin sags, and that magnetic gaze fades. They try to hold on, cosmetic surgeries, expensive clothes, but no one cares anymore. The crowd that once circled them now walks away because there's nothing left to buy. Someone who was once the center of attention is now forgotten, isolated in a world where there's no one left to control. When money and looks fade, they have no way to maintain power. They don't have real love because they never knew how to love, only how to use. They don't have true friends because every connection was a transaction. All they're left with is themselves, an empty ego no one wants to be near. I've seen someone like that before, once wealthy, once attractive, now living off government assistance, ignored by everyone they once tried to impress. They lost everything, not because of fate, but because they never knew how to protect what truly mattered. Why should you be glad you walked away? Because you're no longer just another possession in their hands. You don't need money or looks to prove your worth. You're building a life based on honesty, kindness, and values they could never understand. They lost everything because they relied on what was temporary. You stand strong because you relied on what's real, and that is a strength they will never have. 7. Escaping reality through addiction. When failures pile up and illusions can no longer hide the truth, narcissists don't face reality, they run from it. Alcohol, drugs, gambling, anything to blur the truth that they've lost, that their perfect life is nothing but a pile of ashes. They can't stand the light of reality, the unpaid debts, the broken relationships, the dreams that have vanished. So they drown it out, hoping that substances will turn the truth into some distant dream. Think about someone who once boasted about their success, a so-called entrepreneur with grand promises. They stood before crowds speaking of big projects and impending wealth. But when the project failed, because they refused to plan, refused to listen, they didn't step up to fix it. They turned to the bottle, drinking every night to forget the house that was repossessed, the family that walked away, the disappointed faces of those who once believed in them. But alcohol didn't save them. It only dragged them deeper into darkness, until they couldn't even control themselves anymore. I once knew someone else like that, once, living in the spotlight, the life of every party, always smiling, always confident. But when their career collapsed, because they refused to change, refused to work hard, they turned to drugs. They thought it would help them feel that high again, numb the truth that no one cared anymore. But instead of rising again, they lost everything. Health deteriorated, friends disappeared, and they became a shadow of who they used to be, lost in a haze of addiction just to escape reality. Every time they ran, they got closer to rock bottom, a slow death they refused to acknowledge. Addiction isn't an escape, it's a trap, a fast track to an even more tragic end. They can't face the truth, can't accept that they were wrong, that they failed, so they numb it. But the truth doesn't disappear, it waits, quietly, patiently, and when the substances can no longer block it out, they'll have to face everything, alone, in total collapse. I once saw someone like that, once wealthy, once proud, now living on the street, clutching a cheap bottle of liquor, eyes vacant. They ran to survive, but in truth they've been dead inside for a long time, only their body hasn't caught up yet. Why should you be glad you walked away? because you're no longer the one trying to save them from the mess they threw themselves into. You don't have to witness their self-destruction anymore. Don't have to pull them out of their drunken nights or reckless choices made just to escape. They escape reality to destroy themselves. You face reality to grow, and that difference, that is your victory. 8. Bored by stability, drawn to chaos. Peace is a narcissist's worst nightmare. They hate stability, a healthy relationship, a steady job, a calm, predictable life, because in that kind of life, they can't manipulate, can't create drama, and can't make themselves the center of attention. They crave chaos to feel alive. They need conflict to feel powerful. So they reject the very things others dream of and chase after anything that stirs the pot, even if it's a path that leads straight to destruction. Imagine someone with a loving family, a devoted partner, adorable kids, and a home filled with laughter. You were once a part of that, bringing peace, consistency, and grounding they never appreciated. But they hated it. They hated the routine of family dinners, the calm of quiet evenings together, because in that peace, they couldn't dominate, couldn't stir attention, so they walked away, ran toward a volatile relationship, someone easily provoked, a life full of screaming matches and tears. They called it passion, but in truth, it was just another cycle of pain, losing their home, their loved ones, everything, just to feel something, anything. I once saw someone reject a stable job, good pay, flexible hours, friendly co-workers, simply because they couldn't stand working without constant praise. They jumped into a risky venture, a startup no one needed, hoping to be hailed as a visionary hero, but within months, the project collapsed, they were unemployed, living off borrowed money, and still wondering why everything fell apart. They couldn't see that stability is the foundation for growth. All they saw was a prison keeping their ego locked away. They wanted the spotlight, even if that spotlight led them into the shadows. They can't live in stillness, because stillness forces them to reflect, to face themselves, their mistakes, and the people they've hurt. That's what they fear most. So they run. They run away from the good, you, family, opportunity, and toward chaos, toward drama, toward anything that makes them feel alive. But chaos doesn't nourish, it destroys. They lose everything, genuine relationships, solid foundations, and all they're left with is instability of their own making, alone, with no one willing to share that life anymore. Why should you be glad you walked away? Because you loved the stability they despised. You find strength in peace, in the quiet, simple, honest things. You don't need drama to feel alive. You're alive because you choose to build, not to destroy. They chose chaos and fell. You chose peace and soared. And that's a gap they will never be able to cross. 9. Pushing others to explode and bringing ruin upon themselves. A narcissist doesn't know when to stop. They poke and prod endlessly, pushing you to the edge with insults, manipulations, and contemptuous glares. They think you'll tolerate it forever, that they can trample over you without consequence. But they're wrong. Everyone has a breaking point, and when they push someone too far, an explosion happens. A lawsuit, a blow, or something worse, and they end up paying the price for their own cruelty. Think about someone who abused their partner. Maybe that was you in the past. They humiliated you in front of others, controlled your every move, made you feel worthless. They believed you'd stay silent, that you'd never stand up for yourself. But then one day, you snapped, you left, you sued them, you exposed the truth. Or maybe it wasn't you, it was the next person they tried to manipulate, and that person couldn't take it anymore. They fought back. A lawsuit dragged the narcissist to court. A physical confrontation sent them to the hospital. They don't see it as their fault. They call it madness. But everyone knows they provoked the rage themselves. I once heard a story about a narcissist at work. A tyrannical boss who belittled employees just to feel powerful. They thought they were untouchable, that people would always cower in fear. But one employee had enough. They collected emails, recorded abusive conversations, and took it to upper management. The narcissist got fired, sued for harassment, and now no one will hire them. They never expected their cruelty to come back, but it always does, like a sharp boomerang they threw themselves. Sometimes the explosion doesn't come from just one person, it comes from a group. The co-workers they humiliated, the friends they betrayed, the family members they disrespected, they all rise together to demand justice. I once saw it happen to someone who manipulated an entire sports team, thinking their loyalty was endless. But when the team uncovered the truth, embezzled money, broken promises, they all turned on the narcissist, exposing everything. The narcissists lost their reputation, their career, everything, and still, they didn't see it as consequence, they called it injustice. But every jab they threw was a spark, and when the fire ignited, they couldn't outrun it. Why should you be glad you walked away? Because you escaped before they pushed you to your limit, before you had to explode just to protect yourself. You no longer have to endure their daggers, no longer have to sacrifice your kindness just to survive. They bring destruction upon themselves with the cruelty they sow, a lawsuit, a confrontation, a downfall they never saw coming. And you kept your peace, you kept your true self, and that is your greatest victory. 10. Living in a fabricated past. When the present becomes empty and the future holds no hope, narcissists cling to the past, but not the real past. They hold on to a distorted version they've created themselves. They retell exaggerated stories of their so-called glory days, how they were once wealthy, powerful, admired. They sit in bars, parks, or wherever someone might listen, repeating those lies to anyone who'll lend an ear, but no one really cares. Because their current reality is the loudest proof. They've failed, and that glorious past never truly existed. Imagine an older narcissist sitting at a bar, clutching a cheap drink, telling strangers about their golden years. They talk about lavish parties with hundreds of guests, major business deals that made them famous, and all the people who used to admire them. But if you look closely, you'll see the truth. Their clothes are tattered, their eyes dull from alcohol and loneliness, and no one is sitting beside them. Those grand parties were funded by borrowed money. Those business deals collapsed long ago. The people who once admired them left when there was nothing left to take. The past they speak of isn't memory, it's illusion, a story they tell to escape their crumbling present. I once knew someone like that, a person who used to shine among friends, always bragging about luxury trips and high-powered connections. They acted like they were the center of the universe, always smiling, always confident. But then it all fell apart. The job was gone, the money dried up, the friends vanished. The last time I saw them, they were sitting on a park bench recounting old stories to a passerby, how they nearly became a billionaire, how they once rubbed shoulders with the rich and famous. The passerby nodded politely and walked away, and the narcissist kept talking, not because anyone was listening, but because they needed to believe they once mattered. But the truth is, they don't anymore, not because the world is cruel, but because they never lived authentically. They're not living, they're haunting their own past. They cling to edited memories to convince themselves they still exist, to cover up the truth that their present is nothing but ruins, no money, no friends, no purpose. They don't move forward, they can't. Because moving forward would mean confronting their failures, their isolation, and themselves. Instead, they keep recycling old stories, hoping someone will believe, hoping someone will see them the way they used to see themselves. But no one believes anymore, because their present screams louder than any lie, and that present is a tragic ending they can't rewrite. Why should you be glad you walked away? Because you're living in the now, moving toward the future, while they're trapped in a fake past. You don't need exaggerated stories to feel valuable. You build real value day by day through honesty and effort. They can't pull you back. You've already outgrown them. And that distance isn't a sign of their weakness. It's a testament to your strength. 11. No one loves them. Only loneliness remains. In the end, when everything fades, money, beauty, power, the narcissist is left to face one undeniable truth. No one truly loves them. There are no warm arms to hold them when they're weak, no gentle eyes to comfort them, no one who stays simply because they want to. All that remains is emptiness. Reluctant caregivers, people who stick around out of obligation or financial incentive, but no one who looks at them with real love. They are merely tolerated, a burden no one wants to carry, and that is the ending they've earned after a lifetime of spreading pain. Imagine someone who once manipulated their entire family to take control of wealth, maybe their parents, siblings, even their own children. They lied, deceived, and pushed loved ones away just to keep all the money for themselves. They lived in luxury, believing they'd won, but time passed. Health declined. Finances dried up, and now they lie in a hospital bed, alone. The children they once abandoned don't visit, they don't forgive, they haven't forgotten. The friends who once used them for status are long gone. The caregiver stays only for a paycheck. No conversation, no smiles, just robotic routine. No one holds their hand, no one whispers comfort, only a cold silence surrounds them. I once heard a story about a wealthy narcissist who believed money could buy everything: love, admiration, loyalty. They spent lavishly, threw grand parties with hundreds of guests, and constantly bragged about their perfect family. But after going bankrupt thanks to foolish decisions and arrogance, no one stayed. Their children left, tired of being controlled. Their friends disappeared because there was nothing left to take. The narcissist died in an empty room, cared for by a hired nurse who didn't know their name and didn't care about their story. That wasn't the death of a king. It was the death of a lonely, forgotten, and despised soul. They never knew how to love. They only knew how to take, how to manipulate, how to use. They never gave, never sacrificed, never put anyone above their own ego, so they never received love in return. After a life of inflicting pain, they reap loneliness, not by fate, but by choice. They may have once had you, a loving family, real connections, but they pushed it all away, and now, when they need love the most, there's no one left. It's the kind of ending no one wants, but one they chose step by step through their own selfishness and cruelty. Why should you be glad you walked away? Because now you are free to love and be loved genuinely. Something they will never truly understand. You're no longer trapped in their cold world where affection is just a transaction, a tool to manipulate. You're building real relationships with friends, with family, with yourself. Warm, meaningful moments they'll never reach. They are alone because of who they chose to be. You are free because of who you've chosen to become. And that freedom, that love, is the greatest gift you gained when you walked away. Now, let me make one thing very clear. A narcissist never gets the happy ending they want you to believe. They don't walk off into the sunset with a victorious smile. They lock themselves in a prison of their own mind, trapped in a cycle of delusion, failure, and self-deception. Every step they take is one step closer to the edge, and every door they slam shut only leads them deeper into loneliness. They don't win, they just get better at pretending they do. But that performance can't last forever. And you're the one who broke through the door and walked free. You didn't just survive the storm they created. You rose from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more ready than ever to live your own life. They may have pretty pictures and loud boasts, but that's just smoke and mirrors. A fading illusion when you look a little closer. The truth is, you have a power they'll never understand. The power to face reality, to heal, and to move forward. We are warriors, the ones who walked through darkness and found our way back to the light. You're not just a survivor, you're a phoenix rising from the ashes. You have the power to rewrite your story, not with lies or masks, but with truth, with courage, with hope. The narcissist will never have that. They are stuck, shackled by their own ego, and their ending is the clearest proof they lost, not you. So do this today. Let them go. Erase them from your mind like a bad episode you'll never re-watch. Don't let their fake photos pull you back. Instead, look at yourself. Look at the strength you've reclaimed, the path you're now walking. What will you do today to celebrate your freedom? Take a walk in the park, write a page in your journal, cook a good meal, or simply smile at yourself in the mirror. Do something for you because you deserve it. Drop a comment below and share your story with me. I want to hear how you're taking your life back. Their life is a loop of failure, a cycle of shattered illusions, broken relationships, and dreams that never came true. But your life is a new chapter. A story where you are the author, the main character, the one who decides the ending. You didn't just survive, you're thriving. And now it's your time to live fully, not for them, not to prove anything to them, but for you. Because you deserve every beautiful thing they never had the courage to reach for. Thank you for walking with me through this journey. You're not just a viewer, you're a warrior, and your resilience deserves a gold medal. If this video touched your heart, if it helps you see the narcissist in your life more clearly, hit that like button. It's your way of telling me we're walking this path together. And if you're ready to reclaim your power, hit subscribe, because we're going even further together, exploring more stories, more lessons, and more victories ahead. Next time, I'll bring you a fiery topic you won't want to miss: when narcissists clash, an all-out battle between two massive egos. What happens when two people, both convinced they're the center of the universe, collide? Who falls first? Who shatters? Stay tuned. It's going to be a show you won't be able to look away from. Before you go, I want you to remember this. You are not their victim. You are the hero of your own story. They may have tried to drag you down, but you rose up, stronger than ever before. Step out into the world, hold your head high, and live the life you truly deserve. A life full of light, meaning, and freedom. See you soon, and until then, keep shining, because you are the true winner.